we're going to present the Business Working Responsibly Mark. And as you know, it is independently verified, and our partner in this is the National Standards Authority of Ireland, and I see Morris in the crowd. Can I first call up Accenture? Accenture is represented by Graham Healy, Managing Director, Sales, Health and Public Service. Thank you, Graham, for your support, and really congratulations to all and well done. The next up we have AirGrid, represented by CEO Fintan Sly. AirGrid are a very committed member of business in the community. Congratulations, Fintan, and to the team. Next we have Pfizer Healthcare Ireland, represented by Corporate Affairs Director Karen O'Keefe. And Pfizer have been a bedrock member of ours for many years. And I just want to say congratulations to Karen and well done to all at Pfizer. Thanks very much. Last in this category is Transdev Ireland, who are our Lewis operator, represented by Managing Director Brian Brennan, and a passionate advocate for sustainability in his own right. So congratulations to all at Transdev. We're now moving on to those companies who are receiving the mark for the first time. And could I just ask, when you've received the mark, could you perhaps take a seat at that end and move upwards? So our first today gives me really great pleasure because it's a company I so admire. I watch what they do because they're really striving for excellence, and it's Marks & Spencer's Ireland, represented by Alison Granger. Marks & Spencer's is the winner overall in the overall category in the CSR in the Chamber Awards this year, but not only in Ireland. They are also the overall winning company on corporate social responsibility in the UK as well. Next we have Musgrave Group, and Musgrave is represented by John Curran, Head of Sustainability. So it's great to see another Irish Indigenous company. Next we have Northern Trust, represented by Clive Bellows, Country Head Ireland, a leading global supplier of financial services and a relatively recent member of business in the community. And they joined particularly to get the mark. So this is a great achievement for them. Clive has a fantastic group of people working with them. So congratulations, Kathleen, and to all involved. Next we have Rico Ireland, represented by General Manager Gary Hopwood. I'm delighted to say too, though I shouldn't, but I'm delighted that Rico are our first non-member to get the mark. So really, you don't have to be a member to get the mark. It helps, but really you should go for it. And finally, we have Ulster Bank, represented by CEO Jim Brown. Ulster Bank is the first retail bank to get the mark and also is a partner in today's conference. So thank you to all at Ulster Bank and a great team. Pauline. Around the walls today, you'll see a small exhibition of the leaders of the companies who have achieved the mark to date. And these 16 companies are leaders in their sector and an inspiration to all of us. Taoiseach, thank you so much for joining us today. I know that you have to leave us, but really thanks for making time. I am delighted now to say that we have the wonderful Olivia O'Leary to chair a very short panel session with our new leaders. Olivia.
Hearing all these achievements, I felt a little bit like Jeff's family, all those women saying, am I good enough, am I good enough? Can I possibly compare? He's so right, he's so right. Now, you've been introduced to all our panels, so I don't have to do that all over again. So I'm going to start perhaps with Alison and just ask, are there particular companies, Alison, and particular leaders in this area that you admire, that have inspired you?
I've done 25 years with Marks & Spencer, so I can talk probably more about some of the people within Marks & Spencer that have really inspired me.
The company will love you, yes.
And So I think there's a couple, but I think Stuart Rose probably, you probably know, is a previous CEO of the business. But I think he's inspired me, I think, just because he had the vision long before anybody else did, I think, around how important our, what we call Plan A within Marks and Spencer's was going to be in terms of our social responsibility and the value that it could add to our business. And he was, I think, quite brave, because it was a tough time for our business at that time, to really make some decisions around how we were going to operate and build it as part of our foundation as a business. So I would say Stuart's probably got the vote from me.
Jim, what about you? What about Ulster Bank? Can you think of a person or a company that you've admired?
Okay, outside the bank, if I go back to my early days in banking, it would have been the first organisation that I worked for, which was Canterbury Savings Bank. It was a very small, community-based bank, very strong focus around the community, around customers, and that's something that I guess influenced me significantly. And then moving on from that, through the years, that bank got taken over a couple of times and is now part of the Westpac group in Australia. And in terms of leaders, I would say that Gail Kelly, who heads Westpac, which is one of the leading banks in the world now, is probably the person that inspires me outside the bank. Again, she came from a banking society background, from South Africa originally. Huge focus on the community, on customers, and she's actually driven that culture through what was a relatively staid banking organisation. And you can see the changes in that bank, just in terms of customer focus, huge focus on diversity as well. 40% of their 4,000 managers are women as well. So real cultural change right throughout the organisation.
Clive, the people you admire. I mean, when I think, for instance, about the fact that all my life I've tried to work for companies that I admire, that I can say proudly, wherever I go, I work for so-and-so, and not hide behind my hand, as some people have had to do in this country over the last, number of years. So, from your point of view, company that inspired you, the leader that inspired you?
I'm going to start off internally, and again, it's always easier to do that. And when I first joined Northern Trust in the mid-80s, our president at the time, we're a Chicago-based bank, was a lady called Sheila Penrose. And she was an English lady, had worked for the Treasury in London, had moved to the States and became president of Northern Trust. And for a female to become the president of an American bank at that period of time, president of an S&P 500 company was remarkable, and she truly was very inspirational.
I'm glad there are a few women coming up here as role models. John, do you think that, and we've been through a very rough time for businesses. There's probably never been a rougher time when Irish businesses have been exposed and their warts and all on display. Do you think we are doing enough nationally and internationally to restore trust?
I think we are in some cases. I think a lot of businesses still have a lot to learn about being more ethical, being more sustainable, doing the right thing.
Yeah. What sort of things immediately strike you that aren't being done?
I think that we've heard a lot of good stuff this morning about communication, about how we explain to people what sustainability is about, how we engage with our people, how we bring people along with us. And I'm not sure that all organisations yet do that. I think there's possibly a disconnect between what the senior leadership are trying to achieve and the strategy that they're trying to achieve and what the individuals within that organisation feel is being done. Yeah. So I wonder, the revealed preferences, I thought, was an excellent expression this morning. So are companies revealing themselves more by their actions or by what they're saying than by what they're actually doing?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Minister talked this morning about the fact that it was really incompatible to be talking on one hand about responsibility and corporate responsibility and trust, and at the other hand to have massive unemployment. You are a really big employer. Is that something you've taken on board?
It is, and we've had to go through change ourselves, and it's been a painful recession for us. The retail sector has gone through massive change. But it's always living with your values, I think. And we, as an organisation, we adhere to a very strong set of values that have existed within the organisation for 130 odd years. And I think it's when times are tough, you go back to your values and you live by your values. And I think that's what gives you sustainability or brings you onwards.
Yeah, but you have to have the values in the first place.
Absolutely.
Gary, from your point of view, are we doing enough nationally and internationally, do you think, to restore trust? Because goodness knows we have a long way to go.
Yeah, I think it's a very pertinent topic. I think in my involvement with the Mark, I've had the pleasure to work with Focus Island and see some of the difficulties that people within Ireland are facing at the moment in terms of homelessness, and the 400 families with children that have presented this year homeless, and the 45 families alone in September. So I think there's a lot as a business community we can do to help with that situation as we move to the crisis time for Focus Island around Christmas time.
But internationally, how do you think we are seen? Internationally, have we done enough, do you think, to restore trust?
I think yes, in some ways as well. I think the initiatives around the business working community as well, and how we're seen across the globe in terms of how we're committing extra resources to this project is going to be noticed.
Yeah. Well, if I can turn to some of our people who've had their mark, so to speak, restored, and I know that this is a great achievement. Let me take, for instance, Karen. Is Karen there? Yeah, Karen. I'm conscious that the microphone is a directional one. In terms of what it's meant to you, how has it helped your business, particularly on that whole question of trust and reputation?
Our global CEO has set 4 imperatives for the business, and 2 of those actually relate to what we're discussing this morning, which I think is quite unusual. So, I mean, one of our imperatives is sort of the core of our business, producing new innovative medicines. The other is making the right capital decisions. But then the third one is being respected by society, and then the fourth one is a new culture program around Own It. So I think it's very important. Jeff, spoke this morning about CSR in different activities, and that in a sense it can't be a bolt-on or it can't be a department within your organisation. It's got to permeate and percolate. So for us to have got the award in the first place and now to be certified, certainly will be heard and seen by HQ in New York, to be blunt about it, and it's very important. But I think it's also very important for our employees and colleagues on the ground, because a lot of the policies and practices and processes and commitments that companies have to make to get the award, and there's quite a lot, which is a good thing, and a lot of those practices, while very valuable, I think they can sometimes maybe make the day-to-day work for some employees challenging in some respects, and we're highly regulated, and again, it's a good thing we need to be. So I think to get the mark and to be able to go back to people and say that, look, working with these policies, practices, compliance procedures, looking at what we contribute and give back, that we've got recognition for it externally by a forum like this, by a lot of leaders. I think that means an awful lot to people on the ground.
Right. The journalist in me wants to ask you about drugs prices, Karen, but we don't have enough time this morning.
We don't, so I'd love to go there.
So to move on to Fintan Sly of AirGrid, the difference that having the mark has made to you over the last 2 years.
I think it's made a huge difference. I mean, we went through an incredibly difficult time, as many people will be aware, around the end of last year, start of this year. And a lot of what we talked about here around having values and having purpose to go back to, and that you can rely on. And I think, the theme about building trust, reputation and culture, that's a huge part of what we're trying to do now. I mean, we realized through I suppose the difficult time that we went through that we needed to do better, that we needed to better engage with communities, that we needed to get out there and build reputation and trust. And I think having the mark gives you, I suppose, a bedrock, a certainty that, at its core what you have is solid, and that you have something there to build on. And I suppose one of the gentlemen there on the panel mentioned about having values to go back to, and I think it's at times of crisis that they are particularly important, that you can rely on those values and build on them.
Okay. Can I just quickly turn to Brian Brennan of Transdev? Brian, one of the things one can rely on, actually, is that there'll be another Lewis in 5 minutes. I must say it's brilliant. But what has it meant to you over the last 2 years, having the mark?
It's meant a hell of a lot. It's a huge responsibility. Everything we do now, internally and externally, is judged on the basis of having the mark. So if we do a racism campaign or homelessness and how we treat it, it is an area that I'm very passionate about. I think it's also about leadership. If we work with schools programs, we have to be the best. When I go in to talk to those students, or my colleagues do, we have to be leaders. We have to show them that what we're talking about, we're actually doing, we're leading by example, and that ultimately school kids then become ambassadors for the Lewis instead of throwing stones and things like that. It's a very simple example, but it's very relevant, and it is about a huge responsibility.
Okay, thanks, Brian. And I'm just going to finish because I know we're short on time. That's why I can't actually get to everybody. But I want to end with a real woman in the street or woman in the shop question, Alison, to you. Can I be sure when I buy, and I do buy, dresses or whatever else I buy in Marks and Spencer, that there is no sweatshop involvement there, that no youngster in India has worked in a building that might be likely to collapse on her? Can I be sure that with a clear conscience I can buy in Marks and Spencer?
You can absolutely be sure. And I think we've got lots of examples right across the world of where we're developing state-of-the-art factories and working environments that we can be absolutely proud of. We've got 25 suppliers in Ireland as well, that we're very proud of the work that we've been doing with those as well in terms of improving conditions and practices. So I think you can be absolutely sure.
That's right. And I'm sorry, I left Graham Healy out. Graham, just what it's meant to you, having this mark.
No problem. So I'd echo a lot of the points made already, but coming to what I think Brendan and Jeff said around attracting and retaining talent, and indeed Tánaiste said it as well. So I spend a lot of my time in universities competing for that talent. And the millennials, as I guess, or the digital natives as they're known, they look for a lot more than just the pay package. It's, what are we doing in this whole area? So this is becoming a huge mark for us in that sense in attracting that talent.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful that employees are actually going to be one of the big drivers in terms of keeping you up to the mark on this issue. Right, that's all we have time for, and we'll move on to our next session. Thanks to our panel and congratulations to all of our winners, and I'll hand over to Tina.